All right. So thank you again, everyone. I know some of you have been here. Let me just start it because some of you are already here. Bless
Bless
you.
you.
Thank you everyone for coming to another webinar today. Today I'm just gonna let that one for you, Pam. So I know some of you know about PSS, so PSS and PSS Circle of Care, but also we do have another services called Coming of Age program. Pamela Pamela Ramsden's gonna talk a little bit about that. So again, if you have any question, you can add it in the Q&A box for us. And also, if you want to say something, you can just use the raise option and I can allow you to say something, to speak to us. Again, thank you. And Pam, you can go.
Thank you so much. I'm Pam Ramsden. I'm manager of Coming of Age. We are an organization under the umbrella of PSS, and our whole reason for being is to inspire people 50 and over to live with passion and purpose. So all of our events, we're trying to promote positive aging. We're part of the positive aging movement, and we are not able to do face-to-face or in-person events right now, but we have this wonderful new technology that we can bring you the same kinds of quality events on Zoom. We're very happy about that. Next slide. This is our program today with Dr. Thelma Reese on her new book, How Seniors Are Saving the World, Retirement Activism to the Rescue. What could be more positive than that? Thelma is co-author with BJ Kittredge, and we will hear more about that. I want to tell you a little bit more about Coming of Age. We originated at Temple University, which is Dr. Reese's alma mater. This program was focused on helping people explore their future. We have a wonderful program, a 4-series workshop called Explore Your Future, where you work with your peers in coming up with an action plan of something that you're going to do. These are all of our affiliates. Some of them you will recognize. Many of them are here in New York City. Some of them are national, like the Transition Network. And Reserve is national. And we're proud to say that these are our partners, also doing wonderful things with older adults. So our primary programs are the Explore Your Future workshop. We have Capturing the Energy training for nonprofits, where we help them to really look at how they can maximize the gifts that older people bring in volunteering. We do networking socials, which are evening programs and special presentations. We have 2 websites. One is comingofage.org, which is our national site. The other is comingofageny.org, where we focus more on what's going on in the city of New York. We're also on Facebook and Twitter. This is a training session that was held up in northern New York, upstate, on learning how to do the Explore Your Future workshop. So why are we so important? We're important because we're trying to build communities. And this is what I miss the most about work, not working in the office and having people come in where you see familiar faces and you're building community. But we're still building communities through our newsletters and presentations. We work very hard to combat ageism in all aspects of society. We are always encouraging people to get out and volunteer, to take classes and continuing to learn and get involved in the community. And we know that this positive aging impacts our health and well-being. So we have well-designed, proven programs, and we're educating, we're inspiring, we're empowering people like you. And we're encouraging you to become part of a broader network of purposeful, positive aging. What do we call ourselves? Everything. We don't use the word, Thelma, we don't use the word seniors at PSS. We have 10 centers formerly known as senior centers. And that came out of a study where we're looking at how we want to be called. And a lot of people out of this study decided that older adult might be the right way to go. But there are a heck of a lot of people out there that want to be called perennials, and many are baby boomers. Some of us are not. There are other names we've been called that we don't like at all. We're not even going to bring those up. Okay, so again, if you want to sign up for our newsletter, just go to our website. The New York City newsletter is comingofageny.org, and the national newsletter is comingofage.org. So what I would like to do now is to introduce our very accomplished woman, Dr. Thelma Reese, and we're so delighted you could join us today because she has a lot to say and has done a wonderful service to us older adults in the books that she has written. Let me tell you a little bit about her background. She received her Bachelor of Science and a master's and a doctorate in education at Temple University, and then began teaching third grade in 1954. As she raised a family and progressed through her career, she became an adjunct professor at Temple University and Arcadia University. And then she became professor of English and director of special programs at Community College of Philadelphia. She took an early retirement, and that's when she created the Advisory Council for Hooked on Phonics, and she was the spokesperson in the 90s. She became director of the Mayor's Commission on Literacy for the City of Philadelphia and appeared frequently on television and hosted a cable show also in Philadelphia. She was founder of Philadelphia Young Playwrights, chaired the board of Children's Literacy Initiative, and organized the World Symposium on Family Literacy at UNESCO in Paris in 1994. Clearly, she did not hang up her spurs when she retired. Then she decided to go into authorship, and she partnered with Barbara Fleischer. They wrote two books, The New Senior Woman and The New Senior Man. Barbara Fleischer has since passed on, but before they created this Elder Chicks blog, which you must see. Go to www.elderchicks.com. Interesting articles, interesting perspectives. Then Thelma decided that wasn't enough. Let's write another book. And that's when she partnered up with Dr. BJ Kittredge to write How Seniors Are Saving the World. She's going to talk about that today. If you have questions, again, just click on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen and write your questions, and she will address them at the end of her presentation. Without further ado, I give you Dr. Thelma Reese.
Thank you, Pam. It's lovely to be here, and I thank you so much for this opportunity to speak to the people who have joined the webinar, and thank you all for coming. I think I ought to start with why and how I came to write this book with BJ. At the time that we finished The New Senior Man and Bobby passed away, I really was feeling a bit at loose ends. I was only in my early 80s, and I thought, you know, I have a lot more to do. I've always been troubled by the term retirement. I'm not sure what it means if you're still an active person and your brain is still functioning okay. And I met BJ, who had read the book about women, and we had a mutual friend, and we found that we were very much on the same wavelength in just about anything you would want to think about. Um, and I like writing with someone else. I like to be able to partner with someone. And this has been an extremely fruitful and happy partnership. And of course, we're living in an age where we can do this with our computers. We both had feelings, and also this is BJ's first book, and I wanted the perspective of a young person, and she was still in her early 70s then. So this was also good. Um, we looked around as Bobby and I had done when we wrote about women, and we saw people of our age groups who were doing things that were absolutely changing the world. At least that became their intention in some way. We focused on 24 people of, who range in age from 60 to 95, who all have devoted tremendous time and effort to doing something that is outside of themselves. It's part of themselves, but it also is so engaged with the world in a way that it is intentioned to improve it in some way. And in doing so, they have found tremendous meaning and purpose in their own lives. And while the stories are inspiring, we wanted to add at the end of each one a section called How to Connect. So after you read about this person, who, as I say, may be only 60 at the time of writing or 95, if you want to get in touch in some way, or if you're inspired to do something that this person has either started or illuminated for us, then there's a way to connect on any level. We found people who contribute to the world, as I'm sure everyone in this audience does, in some way that may range from getting together with a group or on your own, writing postcards, marching, taking enormous pride in having been rescued for the first time, or arrested rather, for the first time in your life. People who have embraced causes that we never heard of. And I assume that some of them will be things that you've never heard of either. There's everyone ranging from a woman who actually, with no money of her own, literally, built her own kitchen at Standing Rock. There's someone who has started with also no money, having to raise money, had started a film that she's been working on for years already about veterans with PTSD. There are people who, there's someone who is at 90 before this pandemic, was flying his own plane down the border with Mexico and working there as a very much admired, respected psychoanalyst with the children and the caregivers at the border. Flying down every week himself in his plane. These are all people, just as we are all people, who have gone through tremendous crises in their lives. The woman whose son died, having just finished, he had just finished medical school. He was about to come home. He was killed in a car accident in Turkey. And before that year was out, she had established a nonprofit that still monitors road safety around the world, and for 50 years has been doing this. So people have found ways to deal with difficulties in their lives. And none of us gets to this age without experiencing losses, some of which we thought we would never live through, changes that we didn't expect, and certainly opportunities that we wish we had had and taken or had not missed, or maybe we did take, that changed our lives. But the point is, we don't get to be old, and I will be 87 in June. We don't get to be old without having done all this. Different things for different people, but every time we think about this, I think we need to congratulate ourselves and say, but I did, not only did I get here, I'm still able to think about it. And maybe I could even think about the strengths I have gathered along the way and what I can be doing with those to contribute in some way. One of the things about this pandemic, I think, that is affecting us all is realizing, along with the perhaps loneliness, but certainly the changes that we're experiencing, being sequestered as we are. But we're understanding that we didn't expect this. Nobody expected it. But nobody expected anything else that happened that was a real challenge. We got through them. And of course, we'll get through this too. And what we need to also realize is that this puts perhaps a different light on ageism. It's really true that ageism is affecting how we think about even the pandemic. I was kind of concerned at first that people who are older are being looked at as the most vulnerable, most fragile part of society, because there is certainly a needed focus on the problems of older people that are particular to aging. There may be more underlying conditions just as a function of getting old. And there are people in nursing homes who need very special attention, as we've learned very dramatically recently. But that focus has taken the eyes away from all the strengths that older people bring to all of this right now. Not only the Dr. Fauci, I won't put that in plural, there are not more than one of him, but even Dr. Briggs is in her 60s. So the people who are leading our thoughts, on whom we can depend, in whom we are putting trust, are certainly seniors. And I know that Pam said that the word senior isn't used by coming of age. And we certainly deliberated about the use of seniors. There was a strong push for elders. I think it was definitely my interviews with two people of Native American heritage who are in the book that made me feel, I know a lot of old people and I don't call all of them elders. I reserve that term. Also for the member of the Society of Friends, a Quaker, who's in the book too. Elder says more. Elder implies, or even carries, really directly carries with it, someone we look up to because of wisdom, something they've earned. They've already earned our respect. They're working on it. It's not just because of their of age. The 60-year-old in the book was considered an elder in her tribe in her 50s, and it was well earned. So we we did use seniors. I don't think it carries any opprobrium with it. I actually have gotten to the point where I kind of appreciate the fact that I have the years. I would rather have them than not. And I assume that most of you would rather have them than not. And among us, I think we find that if we get to these ages of being older, we find what are our real values and strengths. I just wrote an article. We have a new website called www.senioractivism.com, and it's on there. But in it, one of the things I talked about was how I'm looking differently at some things that I looked at in another way just several weeks ago, before this sequester. One of them is downsizing. I thought about it in terms, as I think we all do, of getting rid of stuff, material things for the most part. And a lot of us are using this time to do just that. We're cleaning drawers and closets, and we're putting things in bags to get rid of once we go outside and are thoroughly masked and gloved and have somebody to pick them up, or are waiting until we're released from this. But the downsizing has become different to me because I'm finding that a lot of things that I thought were important just aren't anymore. So I'm downsizing some attitudes, maybe things that I thought were values, things that I thought were terribly important, that are sad to let go. I'm sad, very sad that my grandchildren will not have their college education, which was expected this May, their graduation rather. But we're lucky to get their education this far, and they'll find their way. The ceremony has become less important. So many things have become less important. So many people getting married during this time have found out that it's the getting married and not the big wedding, that it's mattering. So that kind of downsizing, I think, is something we could all just sit down and make a list of one day and think, what is it that matters now more than it did before? What is it that still matters, that is still really important to me, that I thought was so important just a couple of months ago? So this is a time that is making us think about not only what we're letting go of, but maybe what we're discovering. And we're discovering things about ourselves and our own strengths and values. So I think that the point of the book, which at first during the pandemic, I thought, well, is anybody really going to be interested in reading about people who BJ and I have found, who we think are exemplars of how one can really devote oneself to a cause and in that way find meaning and try to make the world better? Is anybody still going to care? And now I realize, I think they're going to care more than ever because we are coming out of this. And when we do, I think, as we have with every crisis that every older person has ever gone through in his or her life, we're going to be stronger in some way. sometimes sadder, but then stronger. So I'm not usually a Pollyanna, and I'm not being one about this. I think I'm just recognizing the fact of how one gets to be old and still functioning and still finding interest and joy in new learning and new discovery about ourselves and our world. And that we're at a time when we really can appreciate this meeting, the people who had the flu in 1917 couldn't communicate this way. They couldn't even call each other. My mother lived to be a month short of 97, and she used to marvel till the last day at all the changes she had seen: cars, telephones, airplanes. And of course, my mother never got on an airplane without being dressed nicely, and never in her life wore slacks. But the changes were exciting for her. And believe me, she lived through plenty too, as have you, and as have I. But the amazing thing is the human spirit and the ability to keep learning. It was a great privilege to interview that psychoanalyst who flies his own plane to the border, and I'm saying it in the present tense because I'm sure he'll be doing it again in June, who's a man who has suffered through cancer repeatedly, the loss of a child, and great triumphs in his professional life, and has lived through dedicating himself to the well-being of kids. And I think about that, and I think about everything he went through, and I think he tells great jokes. He finds what is funny and delightful in life. He describes himself when he talks about going to conferences where his wife is the president of the organization, describes himself as arm candy. I like people who can do that. I'm inspired by them. I know I can never do what they've done. And I'm so glad they've been there to do it, and they are there to do it. And I like stories, as I imagine you do too. So I love the fact that BJ and I were able to tell the stories of these people who are entertaining in themselves because their story is so interesting. And so I think that when this book comes out on June 10th, and you can pre-order it on Amazon, just look for my name and it'll take you there, or look for How Seniors Are Saving the World. I think that people will get a little jolt in the arm and say, you know, you have an awful lot to do. There are ways to do it. You will find each other. You are already finding each other. You wouldn't be here. So I appreciate this opportunity to talk with you, and I would love to answer questions and interact with whoever has offered any questions. So Pam, if you have some questions ready.
I don't have questions from our people. I have questions of my own, but I wanted to let you know that a gentleman who's been in the coming of age community for a long time made 2 observations of what he heard. He had to leave early. He said the best quote of the day so far was yours saying, I was only in my early 80s, much too early to think about stepping back from society. He loved that. And he said the second best quote was, I wanted the perspective of a younger person. BJ was only in her early 70s. I love that. But my question is, where did you find these remarkable people?
You know, when we first wrote that book about women, people said, where did you find these women? Because one thing we were determined to do was to make this, make the people, have a book where people came from all walks of life, all ethnicities, around the country, so that we could have gone, frankly, and for this book as well, I could have gone in a 10-block radius of my home in Center City, Philadelphia, and found incredibly fascinating people who are doing wonderful things. And I think certainly for those of you in New York, maybe even in your own building, you can find people easily. We did want to have a real variety of causes and of, again, of all kinds of ethnic groups, even ages, certainly men and women in this book. And we found them easily by just asking around, talking to people, saying, who's doing something that you admire, or what group are you involved with, or so many people are involved with some kind of group now, like Coming of Age. Some of them were recommended by people in our own positive aging lunch group that meets every week, rather every month in Philadelphia. And the word just spread, and we had recommendations galore. And it was hard. It was really hard to make sure that we had that kind of variety. But it was important to not only have a woman who could start and did start that nonprofit herself with help from many people, of course, that she was able to engage when her son was killed. But people, I think you'll find unexpected. I especially love, I don't have any favorites, but I do have an especially warm feeling for the man who lives on Cranberry Island off the coast of Maine, who is 95. And I got to meet in person after only being able to speak with him on the phone for interviews when he came here at 95 to speak at the University of Pennsylvania at the library. So it's been so exciting to meet these people and talk with them.
I think that's a very important point that you made when you were speaking, that there are so many remarkable stories out there. And that we all like to hear the stories. Some of us, tend more toward that than the science and the psychology. But it's
so true.
Being an older person, people don't often ask you about your story.
Right.
And I have a 90-year-old neighbor down on the second floor who's lived a remarkable life. I've seen her for years. I've been in the building for 20 years. And just in working with her and getting groceries and that sort of thing, I asked her her story. And I've never done that before. And she has a remarkable background, but no one asks. This is the thing, we have a lifetime of experience, and what you say, the challenges that we've surmounted. How do we get those stories out? How do we encourage the older person to talk about it?
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I hadn't mentioned something that's I think, been a great influence on me. And that is a woman, a very young woman. I think Benita is, she'll kill me if I'm getting it wrong. Maybe she's turning 40, but I'm not sure. She may be only 35. But when I met her was when we were just about to start the blog, the Elder Chicks blog. And Bobby Fleischer and I went over to the senior center here in Philadelphia. It's not far from my home. And we met with a group. And we were going to start the book about women. We had just started the blog. And someone said, well, you want to meet Benita Cooper. She's an architect, but she started something called The Best Day of My Life So Far. She had come to the center and said, could you give me some older people and a room 1 day a week? And I would like to just sit with them. She missed her grandma back in Seattle, who had been born in China and had stories to tell. And Benita was calling her every week to practice Chinese and to hear her grandmother's story. Her grandmother just died this year. And Benita is a brilliant architect and a wonderful person. And she now has beautiful children, she and her husband. And she started this, and it has become a national movement. And this has become a national organization. It's called bestdayofmylife.org. It is brilliant. And what it does is let people just come. That was her prompt, to get people writing, whether they could write or not, whether they had to dictate. One of the best writers was blind. I remember him from the classes I used to go to and join in. And that, I think that influenced me greatly to really want to hear the stories of people who had lived such interesting lives, some of whom I would never have met otherwise. A couple of whom are in my first two books. A couple of the people that I met through Benita's classes. They are fascinating, and everyone has a story. Everyone has a story. And if you can ask your neighbor to tell you their story, I think if you haven't heard it before, it'll be something worth hearing.
True.
Hi.
We have Colby. He wants to say something. I'm just gonna unmute
Hi,
him.
Colby.
Hi, Colby.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
How are you today, Thelma?
Thank you. Fine.
That's good. I'm from Canada, actually, just a little north from Toronto. So I'm here listening to some of your great experience and your lifelong journey that's still going on, and so I just wanted to mention a couple of things that you pointed out and get some more details on, if possible. The first one is how you said older adults are considered fragile today within our communities, but their experience, so like you said, older adults are considered fragile today within our community. And I think the general population, our community, our society sees them as fragile, and it's sad, really, because I think what makes them stronger and more vigilant than everyone else is their lifelong experiences. I don't know if you want to dive into a little bit, because I'll just give you a little bit of my background. It's because I've actually created an intergenerational organization. So it pairs together youth and older adults within our community. And so I'm starting with that. And, it's, no one asks the stories of our older adults. And so my first workshop is storytelling. So it's asking the older adults their lifelong experiences and the goal of educating our youth. So back to that question about considered fragile, how do we change that within our community?
Oh, Colby, I'm so glad you're on. I'm so glad you brought this up. I'm working on something now with one of the, we have an OLLI program in Philadelphia, the Ulster Lifelong Learning Institute, that is part of Temple University now. And I'm part of a group that is putting together the first intergenerational course with a psychology professor at Temple. She will have her undergraduates with us starting in September in a course for credit where it will be truly intergenerational with the older adults, a panel of us working with them, and the undergraduates from Temple. And I think it's a brilliant thing for her to be pulling together. And the work that Benita Cooper has done with Best Day of My Life So Far also does that. And they have groups working in senior centers with younger people. She started with younger people interviewing the older people and listening to their stories and taking them down. And she still has a tremendous cadre always of young people who want to be involved, who make it into perhaps their life work in some cases. I think that that intergenerational piece is so important. You know, we have a line that was my partner, my great late partner, Bobby Fleischer's, in the book about women. She said, one of the reasons that grandparents and grandchildren get along so well is they have a common enemy. But that's not necessarily the case. They do seem to have often a bond that may skip a generation. So sometimes for younger people, it's easier than for the middle-agers to bond. And there are also some organizations that are trying to encourage having seniors, I will use the term, okay, seniors invite a young person, like a college student, to live rent-free in their home and be a sort of companion. And if someone is living alone, it's a great combination of having a younger person with an older person, and they get to know and understand each other, and each gains really from the experience. I think I'm very excited about this course that we're developing for Temple, where people will actually get, those students will get credit, academic credit for this course about aging. And maybe it'll be a prototype. Maybe you can get people starting on one in Canada. I love the Canadian diphthongs. I notice the way you say about.
Do I have a follow-up? Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so that's actually great because so there's a university in Ontario, McMaster University, that actually has a third-year program in place already for intergenerational studies.
Wow.
And then I'm going to the University of Ottawa next year, and I'm working with professors right now to actually implement an intergenerational course at the University of Ottawa. And so I would be interested in communicating with you. And
please get in touch with me directly. It's really easy. My email address is so easy to remember. It's Dr. Thelma, just DRTHELMA @AOL.com.
At AOL.com.
So if you get in touch with me, believe me, I will stay in touch with you, and I will put you in touch with the people at Temple who are working on this. So we can spread this around. That's so exciting, Colby. I'm really delighted to meet you.
Thank you very much.
I am too, Colby, and I would like to be in touch with you. So my email is pramsden@pssusa.org. Let's talk.
Would you be able to type that in the question box? So I just
Yes, we can add them in the question box for you all.
Great.
We do have somebody else that wants to say something. Judith.
Judith.
Yes.
Oh, let's see. I'm trying to.
Yes.
Okay,
You
I've
are
been unmuted. Yeah. Thank you. Sorry, I can't. I'm here, but no one's. I guess we're not on cameras, so I can't. I'm sorry. You can't see me, but I just want to say I'm in Philadelphia, where Thelma is a living legend. And, it is so wonderful to see you and hear you. I've known of you for so many years, and you know, I actually work with people who are in their 60s and trying to figure out what their post-career world looks like and not willing to retire. So all of what you are sharing is so helpful, and I will be sharing the book with my clients. But I did want to pass on a couple of really interesting perspectives, which came from Joseph Coughlin, who is the founder of the MIT Age Lab. And he also has written a book called The Longevity Economy. And one of the things that he talks about is how so many things that seniors create for themselves are valuable to the larger society. And one of the examples is the company called OXO, which many of us may know from their kitchen utensils that are very easy to handle. They feel really good, and they make it easier to open cans, and they're very well designed. Well, that was a company that was actually started by a 65-year-old retiree whose wife was arthritic, and he didn't see any way for her to be able to use utensils. And it started with a couple of utensils, and now they have something like 80 or I don't even, it's several hundred.
Right.
And the whole society is really interested in them. The other example they gave, which I think is so important for everybody on this call, is that corporate America is so far behind in understanding the value of seniors' experience, but that again, it's starting, and that the more we advocate and recognize that we have the role to play, the more value we can add. So one of the examples was the fact that I gather that people over 50 maybe buy something like 28% more cars than any other demographic. And BMW finally thought, wow, maybe we should be talking to them about what we could be doing with our cars. And so they hired workers on the assembly line for the BMW 5 Series. And those people suggested things, and they now have like better ways to get in and out of the car, and the adjustments for the back are different. And so it was an enlightened company, but how many times do you hear about that? That there are so few of them really recognizing that people our age still have an enormous amount to share. So I just wanted to pass that on.
Oh, thank you, Judith. And I'd love to meet you. So we should get together and at least have coffee when we're able to do that.
Absolutely, but I will email you in the meantime.
Terrific. And I'm glad you mentioned that. There was a man in the book about men, the new senior man, I remember, who knew that he had so many skills, and he was approaching 70, and he sent out a number of resumes, but he just didn't mention his name. And he just mentioned all the things he was really good at. And he finally got an offer. And of course, Rose in this company, they were so dependent on him, and it leads a magnificent life in terms of feeling productive and useful and enjoying what he was doing, but he had lessons to give us about that workplace. There's something about, and I think you'll find that we talk about it in the introduction of this book, the book about how seniors are saving the world. There's something about retirement that has to be adjusted. About maybe the word has to be retired. It needs some other word, because there is a lifelong change that goes on as we grow older, and it doesn't mean that whatever the work was that you were doing has to stop. But Judith is right. This is a corporate attitude, and what's interesting is that some of these companies have very old people on their boards of directors, very old, very rich people on their boards of directors, who you would like to think would speak up once in a while and say, how come you have me here? You know, how come Mr. Smith had to retire at the top of his game when he was 60? I mean, I know somebody who had to retire. He's also in that book about men, from Deloitte. He was a major person. And by 60, he had to go. Now, he went with a very lovely payoff, but he really didn't feel like going. It was part of his contract that he wouldn't still be there. He's leading a good life. I'm in touch with him and his wife. And there was no reason, though, that he had to make that definite choice. It was absolutely policy at the company that if you were at that level, which was very high of management, you knew that you would be going at that age.
Thelma, we have some questions. Pam, can you read the questions? We have a few questions in the Q&A box. You can start by with Karen.
Is that?
Pam, do you want to read it? Yes.
I've got a question here. Karen Reaver asked, do you have an example of people who are making a difference while caring for a spouse with dementia?
That is so hard. I think that is the hardest thing of all. And it happens to everybody in some way. Those of us who survived someone usually had some caregiving to do. I think that so much has been done and is being done about working with the caregivers. Vic Compher, Compher, who's in the book about men, has done wonderful work with this. The person who is giving the care needs so much support from the rest of us, I think, from the rest of the community, and so much strength to take care of herself or himself, and knows that keeping up her own strength is what is really necessary for the partner, but still has a mind that has to develop on its own too. So it's part of that taking care. And I think that whatever ability one has to participate in something else beyond that caregiving that is ongoing, something else on a small scale, something else that employs your interest for part of the time, is so important for your mental health and for the rest of the world. Whatever contribution you make is doing something. When I said that when you're staying in right now, you're being an activist, I meant it. I mean, that's not just a feel-good thing. I think you have to think about that and think about, well, what is it doing? and give yourself credit for what it's doing. We know it's changing attitudes about ourselves and about the world as we're doing it. This is a time of enormous self-reflection, which means it's a time of growth, inner growth. So while you're doing that, and I wish I were there. I wish I were there to give you a real hug, but that's really the best I can do is a virtual one, and encouragement to do whatever it takes to take care of yourself. And I think that part of taking care of yourself is participating in something else outside. Right now, it's saving the rest of us from the pandemic. And it might be when you read about the 24 people in the book, one of them will say to you, you know, I care about this too. Maybe I could do something. Maybe I could write a letter. Maybe I could make a call. It's possible.
Seems like there's always something to do, isn't there, Thelma?
Exactly.
We can't sit and wait for something to happen.
Exactly.
That's the point of activism, isn't it? We do something. Donna Smith says, what types of activities or routines do you personally subscribe to keep you active and continually learning?
Well, let's see. A lot of sloth. I'm doing a lot of sloth these days.
Yay.
I'm finding myself going to bed much earlier, and I am finding myself watching things. There's a great German, Austrian collaboration series of mysteries that returns today on something that I get on streamed on my TV. I will watch a murder later on that show. that will take me away from everything else. I try to do my exercises that I learned after back surgery, and I try to do them. I should do them every other day. Sometimes I don't, but I try to do the most times that I'm supposed to. I live in a 3-story house. My husband works on the 3rd floor. I work on the 2nd. So going up and down steps is part of my routine every day. I'm very good as part of my routine of putting off things. I consider that part of my routine to put off writing I must do. And keeping in touch with people. I call friends and I tell them that I'm just checking on the elderly and hope they'll check on me too. But I think for me too, it's a great time of self-reflection and talking to BJ.
And we have that, it's a gift, isn't it? We have that gift right now. Everything's going to
do. My kids live, my daughters live on the West Coast, and now every Sunday we get to Zoom with them and their children, and so that's beautiful that we have a family conversation, which is wonderful.
There's a comment, not so much a question, from Carmen Thorne. Who says blind seniors from New York, from NYC are amazing. You can find these amazing seniors at Visions Services for the Blind and Visually Impaired in New York City. These seniors are photographers, dance teachers, cooks, computer teachers, therapists, businessmen, and more. You're more than welcome to come and give us a visit at our center. We would love you. Every Monday, we have a group of active seniors who meet and would love for you to visit. Our group is called Seniors Speak Out. Check us out on our website at www.visions, vcb.org. Visions has been serving seniors for 95 years. I have loved listening to your experiences, and our seniors are fabulous and strong.
I believe that years ago I was on the board for the Library for the Blind and Physically Handicapped here in Philadelphia. And I know how strong people who are blind and physically handicapped are. And I mentioned that man in Benita Cooper's group for Best Day of My Life So Far, who was just amazingly inspiring and brilliant. He had been a musician professionally, and just wonderful. Yeah, I would, if there's a way to do it electronically, just get in touch with me.
I think we're coming at the end of our hour, and I guess the last question is the most important. What is next on your to-do list?
Well, I do have to write an article about things I'm thinking about, and have that published before the book comes out. A few more of them are due, and I guess more thinking, and something always pops up. It seems, there are always things to deal with, and everyone has them. And I know I'm going to want to follow up with Colby and find out more about what's going on in Canada. That's exciting. I love the intergenerational piece. So this has been a great deal of fun for me, and so nice to see you again, Pam.
Nice to see you too. And I someday hope to be reading a book about you, because you are inspiring and you're giving us stories of other people who are inspiring, and it's just been a delight. I hope everybody rushes out and buys 5 copies of your books for gifts. You want to say something, Shaina, about the recording of this?
I'll say yeah. So if anybody missed up some part of the webinar, it will be posted on our website. So we didn't have the time to answer all the questions, so you can also send the question directly to Dr. Thelma, and she will be able to answer your questions.
Absolutely.
But our webinar will be posted on our website. It's pssusa.org. For easy access /resources, and then you will see all our past webinar and this one. It will be probably posted in a few days from today, like in 2 or 3 days.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
And again, I can't thank you enough, Thelma. It's such a pleasure to hear everything that you've done and everything you believed in and everything you want us to believe in about ourselves and our competency and our capabilities and the gifts that we have to share. So thank you and good luck.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.